most of that's happening overseas. We only have had a couple in recent years in the United States, but I firmly believe that we are on a direct path to a change in those numbers. There are a number of things that have been occurring that the Holy Spirit has been teaching us and leading us and providing for us to prepare us for more of that happening here in the U.S. There's a lot of church planting already going on, and I believe that we have been called, we have been drawn into that ministry. Now, I used to wonder a couple years ago just exactly what was going on as far as church planting and starting new churches was concerned, because obviously looking around, in my experience, there didn't seem to be a lot going on, so I wasn't really sure. But I had an opportunity a couple years ago to attend a national conference in Florida where church planters and people who work with church planters come together every year down in Orlando, Florida. And I was astonished. 3 years ago at this conference, it's called the Exponential Conference, there were several hundred people there from around the country involved in starting new churches. The following year, 2 years ago, there was over 1,000 of them. This year there were almost 3,000 of them. And I took about 13 or 14 people with me, some district pastoral leaders, guys like Mike Rasmussen. Forgive me if I don't remember everybody that is in this group. I think there were several who are sitting here who went with me to experience what it's like to rub shoulders with people who actually plant new churches and who are involved in that. Jesus is busy starting churches. And I came away from that this year. Oh, Ken Williams comes to mind. Good friend of mine and part of the Church Multiplication Ministries team. I came away this year thinking, the Spirit is on the move. Wouldn't it be great if Grace Communion International had a piece of this action? And then I don't know whether the Spirit spoke or somebody like Ken said something to me, but somebody said, Randy, we already do have a piece of this action. It is already starting. It's starting in places like Philippines, Africa, a little bit of it here in the United States. But we have been brought to a place in our fellowship where this is something that Jesus is doing, and I hope more and more of us can recognize it and intentionally take steps to get on board with it, with what's going on. To not do church as usual, but to do church differently somehow, and that is in multiplying churches, in intentionally learning how we can take steps now, not someday when everything's okay and everything's just right, but begin taking some steps in faith and confidence right now to learn what we can do, each of us, regardless of the size of our congregations, to take some steps now to participate in this ministry and what Jesus through the Holy Spirit has been doing all along and is doing right now. Now, I know as we talk about this, and we've been talking about this for a couple years, you've heard me say some of these same things, and I know you know a little bit more, at least a little bit more about starting new churches. There are people, members, pastors, congregations around the country who are fully on board with what we're talking about here and want to engage in this ministry, who want to do some things to fulfill a vision that we believe that God has given us for starting some new churches. And I believe that more people are going to see what can be done and join in. I'd like to just talk for a moment about our vision, because people will say, what is it? How would you describe it? What does it look like? Well, we see Grace Communion International participating in Jesus' mission to the world to start new churches and new kinds of churches, because it takes new kinds of churches to reach not only the multicultural group of people that we have and populace that we have in the United States, but it takes some new churches just to reach new generations as well. New kinds of churches for all kinds of people, all kinds of races, generational groups, genders, you name it, in all kinds of places. maybe in the traditionally oriented kind of places, church buildings, but maybe storefronts, homes where people work, where they play, where they recreate. But we see not just 300 and some churches, which we currently have in the U.S. right now, and not just maybe a few score more as we've had around the world in the last couple of years. But we believe that in the years ahead, there will be many scores. We hope for hundreds of new churches. Now, they don't all have to be big mega churches. In fact, I'm kind of like Joe. I'm not really that interested in having great big churches. Now, if those great big churches will multiply new churches and serve as training centers for helping others reach new people, then I'm all for that. But I'm talking about churches of all kinds of sizes, small ones, large ones, medium churches, reaching all kinds of people. People that you and I, frankly, will not, for a number of reasons, be able to reach with the good news that Jesus has given us. Not because we're bad or there's something really wrong with us. It's just because we're different from a lot of the people who have yet to be reached, and they need to be reached in a different way than we're used to or that we're able, based upon the gifts and the experience that Jesus has given us. So we see in GCI ahead, we believe that Jesus has brought us on the path in the Spirit for just a whole bunch. Don't pin me down on numbers. Been down that road. I don't want to go down that road. A whole bunch of new churches in our future. Now, the questions, of course, are how are we going to do this? How can we possibly do that? And I want to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes and in the workshops that we have. But I want to introduce you to somebody who's a very, very good friend of mine.